Did you know that ships significantly older than the pyramids are lying dormant in the middle of the desert? But what were the mysterious sunboats of Abydos doing in the heart of the desert sand in the first place? What significance did these mysterious vessels have for the ancient Egyptians, and how did they manage to defy the scorching heat for thousands of years? Let's get to the bottom of these exciting questions together, but be warned, today's boat trip will not take us over some idyllic little river, but straight into the eerie world of the dead. Many archaeological sensations are practically served to researchers on a silver platter, but unfortunately, the experts do not always manage to recognize the said silver platter as such. After a severe sandstorm swept through the area around Abydos in 1988, no one initially knew what the structures uncovered by the wind were. Blown into the light about 1.5 kilometers from the ancient Egyptian royal tombs, experts saw a formation of mud bricks for the first time and dismissed them as unspectacular remains of a wall. In fact, it would take until 1991 for researchers to realize that a priceless testimony to the past was hidden beneath their feet, and another 9 years before the 14 ships were finally correctly identified. But what on earth were so many ships doing in the middle of the hot desert sand in the first place? Was the area still underwater during the time of the pharaohs? Were these possibly the remains of a royal fleet? These were precisely the questions facing scientists from the universities of Pennsylvania, Yale, and New York in 2000. Since the ships were in a state that could be described as modest at best after all this time, it was impossible for the researchers to excavate them completely. However, the wood had been preserved well enough to allow the experts to take samples and ultimately show that they were dealing with relics almost 5,000 years old. Since the pyramids of Giza are thought to be around 4,500 years old, the ships were built several centuries before the stone colossi. The bottom line is that the 14 objects measured between 20 and 30 meters in length, and with their proud age, they also became the oldest known fleet of ships ever. Yet, the environment in which they were stranded clearly showed that these were by no means classic ships. The true significance of the sunboats of Abydos only became apparent to experts afterward. Initially, they believed the ships had once anchored on the banks of the Nile. However, this idea was dismissed after modern studies showed that this theory is not compatible with the actual course of the Nile. Furthermore, the ships would not have been found in such a systematic and parallel arrangement as they were. Consequently, another explanation for the mysterious find had to be found, and the experts finally concluded that the ships were nothing more than burial sites. Each ship tomb had its own boundary wall, also suitably shaped like a ship and plastered with clay and lime. Furthermore, each ship of the dead was equipped with small boulders as anchors, and the inner walls of the chambers were adorned with more than 120 ship drawings and rings. But what was the meaning behind all of it? It is common knowledge that the ancient Egyptians buried their dead in imposing pyramids or massive necropolises, but why on earth did they decide to make ship graves around 2740 BC? Was this mysterious site truly intended for burials, or did it serve a completely different purpose? Amazingly, we could have found answers to these profound questions much earlier. Because archaeologists have technically known about the existence of the hidden chambers for almost 100 years. British archaeologist Arthur Weigall had already come across the confusing structure west of the Nile at the turn of the century. Together with his team, he glimpsed the interior walls of the site, but after a roof collapse, further exploration had to be abandoned, and the site was gradually forgotten. Upon rediscovery, however, the ships were classified as so-called sunboats. In ancient Egypt, boats were essential for transportation not only for people but also for the gods. The inhabitants of the Old Kingdom actually believed that the sun god Ra traveled across the sky in a boat during the day and crossed the waters of the underworld at night. Since all the solar barks at Abydos point towards the Nile, researchers assumed they were royal ships intended to carry pharaohs to the afterlife. What about the background of the solar barks? The practical aspect of otherworldly voyages is another question entirely. Each solar barge could accommodate up to 30 rowers, making them fully functional ships, although whether they ever set sail remains a point of scientific debate. What's undisputed is the extraordinary significance of this discovery. While solar barks near the Pyramid of Khufu were uncovered in 1954, the solar barks of Abydos are not only significantly older but also crafted from a different material, tamarisk wood instead of the Lebanese cedar used later. In ancient Egypt, wood was a rare and precious resource, and only a powerful pharaoh could afford the luxury of a full fleet for the afterlife. Additionally, the design of the ships reveals the ingenious methods of ancient Egyptian craftsmanship. They used sophisticated plug-in systems to join individual parts, similar to an ancient form of Lego. This system, based on tenons and mortises, would go on to be one of the most important features in Mediterranean and Egyptian shipbuilding, allowing Egyptian boats used in trade to be disassembled for transport and reassembled at their destination. Despite practical considerations, aesthetics were not ignored. Pigment residues on the solar barks of Abydos suggest that the ships were painted in bright shades of white and yellow. Before being swallowed by the desert sand, the outer walls of the vaults were also covered in a bright plaster made of white limestone, ensuring these vessels presented a striking, vibrant appearance. This reflected the sunlight, which is why the graves must have looked like sparkling diamonds in the middle of the landscape. Incidentally, this technique was later used for the ostentatious cladding of the pyramids, although not much of it remains today. The riddle of the pharaoh. Once scientists had succeeded in uncovering the construction background and original purpose of the ship, there remained another significant question: which pharaoh were the barges meant to accompany into the afterlife? While many riddles surrounding the pharaohs remain unsolved to this day, in this case, the answer was fortunately not far away. Just 1.5 kilometers from the ancient royal necropolis of Amelkueb, the ship graves lie adjacent to Shunet el-Zebib, an enormous mud brick structure attributed to Pharaoh Kheskemwy. As the last king of the early dynastic period, Kheskemwy ruled until around 2740 BC. During his reign, he successfully unified Upper and Lower Egypt, creating the foundation for a 500-year period of stability. After his death, Kheskemwy was buried in a large tomb complex measuring 70 by 12 meters, which included not only his burial chamber but also over 50 storage rooms. As for the ship graves, it's believed that Kheskemwy's body was transported down the Nile to Abydos in a grand procession, and afterward, the ships were placed in chambers near his tomb to accompany the king into the afterlife. Kheskemwy may not have traveled alone either. The solar barks of Abydos are not the only ones that have awakened from their millennia-long slumber. As mentioned, the solar bark of Khufu, found in pieces totaling over 1,200 parts, was another monumental discovery. In 1969, experts found 19 boat burials in Helwan, although only 4 have been scientifically published. These and other similar findings show us how deeply belief in the afterlife was ingrained in the consciousness of the Egyptians, and they offer a glimpse into the mysteries yet to be uncovered. Perhaps there are still more ship graves waiting to be discovered, revealing the depth of ancient Egyptian traditions. Next time you're online, we'd be happy to welcome you back to our channel. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe so you never miss a new video. See you soon.